Maheen, we were discussing Pandori and the Tal block with Uwais और फिर बात आ गई थी weakening US dollar की जो tax cuts हमको global economy में नजर आए हैं they don't seem to be helping the cause, and if the cause is not going to be helped, once again oil prices are going to remain bullish. क्या strategy है अभी BMA की if the dollar doesn't strengthen?
Well, I mean, the dollar is weakening on various structural issues that are going on in the US, and until those resolve themselves, which I don't see really happening anytime soon, I mean, there are rate cuts there, and they are taking, they are stabilizing the asset markets to a certain extent. But I think this whole subprime issue and the weakness in the housing market is obviously extending into the entire US economy. And most analysts are already talking about the US already being in recession, and so these things obviously point to further dollar weakness. So in this regard, we continue to see oil on higher levels, given of course that investors in the US are looking for safer havens for their money, and in that regard oil and commodities, etc., are the ones that investors are looking to put their money in, and as a result, I think we will continue to see oil and commodities at such high levels. Now, from the Pakistan side, I think what we are telling our clients is that we really need to focus on these sectors. Hence, we have seen the E&P sector perform to a certain extent. It still has more potential. We've also seen the fertilizer sector do well. So anything related to oil and commodities is really going to have a good year this year.
Yeah, interesting point. Moving on, कल स्टेट बैंक की रिपोर्ट के फिगर्स आपने जरूर पढ़े होंगे. थोड़े से कंसर्न्स आ रहे हैं फिस्कल डेफिसिट पे. आई थिंक कंसेंसस ये रीच हो गया था बिटवीन स्पेशली इंडिपेंडेंट इकोनॉमिस्ट के वो टारगेट अचीव नहीं होगा, लेकिन सरप्राइजिंगली 5% से ज्यादा है टू जीडीपी, which is a bit of a concern. Another downward revision in economic growth. इन्फ्लेशनरी प्रेशर्स अभी भी मुल्क में हैं. लग नहीं रहा कि एक इंटरेस्ट रेट रिलीफ हमको नजर आया था. बिफोर मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी वी वर टॉकिंग टू बीएमए एंड यू डिडंट एक्सपेक्ट an interest rate hike. It came as a bit of a surprise because of the downward trends in economic growth. But these recent numbers are really not showing an interest rate cut. So where do we stand, Maheen?
I mean, at this point, really, what the State Bank has highlighted something that I think a lot of us already knew, that I think the 7% GDP growth target was not going to be achieved, that the fiscal deficit would be in excess of 5% this year, and of course, they'll be worsening on the current account deficit. So these numbers coming out of the State Bank are something I think most of the market and most of the analysts were expecting in any case. Now, when the governor did raise rates in December, at that point in time, the State Bank reports indicated that growth was still fairly stable. But we've seen obviously that is not the case. That 7.2% GDP growth will not be possible this year. But at the same time, I think what the State Bank is really focused on is the inflation side. And the inflation side is driven by external factors, largely food and commodity inflation, and that really cannot be controlled by interest rate hikes. So we really have to see what the State Bank decides to focus on in the June policy meeting. I don't think a rate cut is on the cards, but it is possible that they may not hike rates. But again, it really depends on where inflation numbers sit and where the money supply growth sits at that time.
Interesting. Maheen Rahman, Head of Equity Research, BMO Capital Management. Thank you very much for taking time out and talking to